Hi everyone, my name is Rose, also known as TA Summers. Welcome back to my channel. So the Goodreads Choice Awards winners have been posted. I'm currently trying to set things up to be able to film that feature very soon. So what I'm going to do is have this as an intro, transitioning into my live reactions of the winners of the Goodreads Choice Awards, and then I will translate my thoughts to that and give you an outro. So, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and jump in, and these are my reactions. Hope you enjoy.
Okay, I think we can get started. So the intro to this video was a lie. This is not a live reaction, unfortunately. What I actually did was record an 80 to 90-minute video that was a live reaction to each of the choices that were in the Goodreads Choice Awards, and I decided to scrap the whole thing and just go with something that was a little bit more condensed, a little bit more streamlined, because if other people's reactions are any indication, this was kind of a surprising Goodreads Choice Awards for some things, some pleasant surprises and some unpleasant surprises. So I'm just going to kind of do a condensed version of my reactions to the Goodreads Choice Awards, um, based on what I chose for the final round, and I may highlight a few books that actually did not make it past the opening round, because some of those books do deserve quite a bit of love, and unfortunately they didn't make it to the finals. And also because some of those books actually ended up on my TBR from the library, so I'll just touch on those as I get to them. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started. I have my camera set up and I am starting off with Best Fiction. So you may recall that for the Best Fiction category, I narrowed down to two books because all of these in the Best Fiction category I did not unfortunately read. So, and like before the opening rounds began. So essentially, the book that I'm reading right now, which is Sarah Addison Allen's Other Birds, was the one that I chose for the final my final pick for the Best Fiction category, and it was one between two, which was that book and Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. Gabrielle Zevin was the one that won, and it was a very big winner. It got 90,971 votes. That is extremely impressive, and I'm really happy for Gabrielle Zevin because Gabrielle Zevin has been in the writing community for quite some time, wrote quite a few YA novels. I recognize her work from there, and I believe this is her first big win in terms of best fiction category, and I am so happy. It's awesome. I'm really happy for her. To kind of briefly go through each of the other nominees, I did not realize that Jodi Picoult had two nominations in the best fiction category. So Wish You Were Here got second with 54,368 votes, but it also had a she also had a novel that was nominated in the opening round that didn't make it past the opening round, and that was Mad Honey, which she wrote with Jennifer Finney Boylan. And I'm not 100% sure about what Mad Honey was about. I think it was a dual perspective novel in terms of things, though I do have it on my want to read list. That only got 8,654 votes, so that's basically highlighting that very quickly. Frederick Backman's The Winners is the third in the Beartown series. I have not read that. I haven't even read, I don't believe I've read Beartown apart from some snippets of it, so I'll have to probably start from the beginning and go from there in order to go to this one. But this one got a respectable third place with 52,412 votes. Um, I don't really have much to say about some of these other ones because I did read out the top 10. You can see the placement here for Remarkably Bright Creatures, Hotel Nantucket. Celeste Ng did very well with getting, I believe, sixth place for Our Missing Hearts with 34,753 votes. I'm actually happy for her. Um, But my original pick for the Sarah Addison Allen's Other Birds got a respectable ninth place with 24,077 votes. And yeah, I don't really have much to say about the best fiction category because I have not read a number of these books, but I do plan on adding a number of them to my TBR. Some of them I already have here, and we're just going to keep on going. So next we're going to go to mystery and thriller. Ultimately started voting for The Maid because I started reading The Maid uh like before the closing round ended, and I actually really enjoyed the audiobook for this. I have not finished it, but I'm working through it and I actually like it. I actually like it a little more than the other book that I was debating between voting, which is Lucy Foley's The Paris Apartment. So The Maid was the one that ended up winning 78,403 votes, which is very impressive. And it really wasn't that much of a gap between it and The Paris Apartment, which was 70,346 votes. That is very, very well done. Third place, The Bullet That Missed, which is the third book in the Thursday Murder Club series by Richard Osman, got 45,969 votes. Flicker in the Dark, 36,199 votes for coming into fourth place by Stacey Whittingham. So I'm not going to go through too much. I was also interested in the book of cold cases by Simone St. James, as I mentioned in my previous video. That ended up coming in fifth place with 29,557 votes. And you can see that some of these vote totals were really close. Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister came very close in terms of margins with Killers of a Certain Age, so I found that very interesting. Ruth Ware came in eighth place with The It Girl. All Good People Here, Ashley Flowers that came in ninth, and Daisy Darker came in 10th. Golden Couple by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. I kind of had a feeling that it wouldn't make it past the first round because Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen's works tend to be hit or miss, especially with me. So I do still plan to read it because I believe I have this as an advanced reader copy. So I will be getting to that and letting you know my thoughts about it. Jackal by Aaron F. Adams is one that I have as an advanced reader copy that I want to get to, but I've heard Jackal is very polarizing, and that's one that is on my list, but I'm not sure when I'm going to get to it. I do want to read it though. Overnight Guest by Heather Gudenkauf. I'm kind of surprised that didn't place higher on this list because Heather Gudenkauf has been nominated in the Goodreads Choice Awards before and is a regular with respect to mystery and thriller. But I have not really heard too many people talk about this one. Catherine Stedman's The Family Game is one that I got as an add-on for Book of the Month, and I'm definitely planning on reading that. And then I also talked about More Than You'll Ever Know by Kitty Gutierrez, which I've gotten from my library, and I definitely plan on reading. I'm kind of surprised that it got last place with only 2,739 votes, but it may be that just a lot of people have not been able to pick it up, or in terms of name recognition, it didn't get the mileage that some of these other ones has. But I'm happy for The Maid. Like, I've heard good things about it, but I've also heard unique criticisms about it too. So I'm hoping to be able to finish that as soon as I possibly can and give you my thoughts on the whole novel once I'm done with it. So let's move on to the next category, which is, I believe, historical fiction. And this one that I was bummed about, I had voted for Take My Hand, but the big winner in this category was Taylor Jenkins Reid. And I figured I'm not surprised that Carrie Soto is back as one because of the sheer popularity of Taylor Jenkins Reid. But what I am surprised about is how the other nominees stacked up to Taylor Jenkins Reid because Taylor Jenkins Reid won 100,745 votes And then you look at the spread across these other nominees and looking at the arrangement of things, I'm like, I was very surprised how Lessons in Chemistry performed. That got 92,554 votes. Diana Gabaldon, I'm not surprised that it got third place, but I am very surprised that it was only 42,201 votes for Go Tell the Bees that I Am Gone, because I thought that it would get much more votes than it did, but it may be that as part of the Outlander series, because it's number 9 in the series and stuff like that, it may just not have done the numbers compared to maybe some of the other ones on this list. So it is what it is. Take My Hand was able to get 8th place with 21,970 votes. That was very respectable. I'm glad that it did as well as it did, even though like I'm kind of bummed that it didn't win. I really think it really should have. The Last House on the Street by Diane Chamberlain, I have talked about in my previous video. That is on my to-read list from the library, and I'm hoping to get to that soon. Like I said, not much for me to say about a lot of these nominees because just for the sheer fact that I have not read them. And some of them I did not hear about until coming across the Goodreads Choice Awards. But it's unfortunate that so many of the ones, like even Take My Hand was such a powerful read, and I wish that more people, even though it was an option for the Book of the Month pick, I wish more people had known about Take My Hand. It was just a very powerful novel for the subject matter that it tackled. And the way that Dolan Perkins Valdez chose to highlight such an important, based on a true story, account of a nurse's efforts trying to help two girls in 1970s Alabama, even tracking that story to the present day in terms of how her efforts impacted their lives was such a powerful read. So yeah, that's my take on it. So we're going to move on to fantasy. And fantasy upset a lot of people, but I'm not surprised at the result. So if we pull that up here, Sarah J. Maas won again for this for House of Sky and Breath, which is part of the Crescent City series. I have not read the first book. Um I'm curious to read the first book. It may not work for me. I may try the first book, but I'm still kind of on the fence of whether or not I'm actually going to read the second book itself. So, of Sky and Breath won 105,718 votes. And then there's a very large gap between that and Babel, which got 62,732 votes, which is so disappointing. I really wish that Babel would have been able to win. I've heard great things about it. I am going to read it this month and give you my thoughts about it. So that's coming up on my to read list pretty soon. Stephen King's fairy tale came in not too far from Babel with 60,818 votes. And rounding off in 4th place is The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake, which I've read a little bit of, and I've liked so far from what I've read of it, but I have not finished it. It got 57,401 votes. Not too much to say. I did vote for Legends and Lattes, and I am bummed that it did not place higher. It was such a fun read. It got a respectable 8th place with 26,408 votes, so I'm happy about that. Very, very surprised that Brandon Sanderson's The Lost Metal drew as low of a vote total as it did. It got 21,294 votes. I would have thought it would have been one of the higher ones, but I had mentioned that probably what did not work for it was the fact that it came out around the time of the qualifying rounds. So it probably just did not pull as many numbers. And also because it's the latter part of the Mistborn series, it's the second part of the Mistborn series. I would like to revisit the Mistborn series at some point and be able to get to this novel as soon as I can do so, but I am not 100% sure when I'm going to be able to do that. because I really like it's been a while since I've touched Mistborn, so I kind of want to start from the beginning and then work my way up to the Lost Metals. So some of the other books that were in the opening round that didn't make it were Electra by Jennifer Saint. I have that as a, an advanced reader copy, and I will be reading that. Kaike I own because that was a Book of the Monk pick that I picked up, and I read a little bit of it, and I actually really like it. I really enjoy it. It got 6,145 votes, which is pretty cool. I wish it were more. I wish it were more. T. Kingfisher's Nettle and Bone is one that I picked up from my library, so I'm definitely looking forward to reading that as soon as I possibly can. It has a wonderful premise, and I like the fantasy setting of it. I'm kind of surprised it did not make it out of the initial round. The World We Make really surprised me, but to be fair, it had not been released as long as some of the other books that were on this list when the opening round came up. So I'm guessing that also worked against it, but only 3,974 votes. I don't know. I really don't know. I really thought that it would have done better, but and another thing that kind of probably works against it is because it's the second book um, in the Great Cities series. So I will be reading that when I get to it. I will probably pick up a copy for myself as soon as I possibly can and give you my thoughts on both The World We Make and the City We Became, which is the first book in the series. So yeah, I really wish that the fantasy category would be split off between um, general fantasy and romantic fantasy. So that way, Sarah J. Maas can have kind of her own uh, domain because basically it feels like a lot of the time Sarah J. Maas's books take away from a lot of the range of fantasy titles in these competitions. Like it's not that I'm trying to slight Sarah J. Maas's success at all in terms of writing fantasy and things like that and her popularity, but the way that these contests are structured and things like that, it would be better. It would be a better fit for best fantasy romance for Sarah J. Maas to be a part of that, as well as Jennifer L. Armentrout and even other authors who may be like Ilona Andrews, um, to better kind of like have different distinctions between fantasy categories. We can have fantasy romance. We can have general fantasy. We can have uh, I'm trying to think of another distinction, but just having different categories of fantasy since fantasy is so broad, um, I think would be a better delineation than just having like the collective fantasy again, than having some of the same people still like win these categories just from sheer popularity alone because there was no way that R.F. Kuang had a chance to be able to stand against Sarah J. Maas because of the differences in their fan bases, and it just doesn't seem fair to me. It really just doesn't seem fair, but it is what it is. Let's move on to romance, and romance pleasantly surprised me. The pick that I had for this was Book Lovers by Emily Henry, and I am happy to say that it actually won 175,857 votes. Very well done. And then, as I predicted, um, Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover and It Starts With Us split the vote. So having two titles in here split the vote for Colleen Hoover. But I am so happy that Book Lovers won. It's such a great book. It was my first Emily Henry title, and I'm very happy that it won. To kind of highlight some of the other but it like and here's something that's interesting. Even with um the both of the totals for Reminders of Him and It Starts With Us, both of these added together still would not have beat Emily Henry overall. So you can see that here. Reminders of Him got 64,550 votes. Starts With Us got 62,221 votes. That said, I still think that per category, an author should only have one nomination per category, not just to not split the votes, but to give more opportunities to other authors to be represented in these kinds of categories. So just that's my opinion. I'm sticking to it. So in terms of fourth place, you can see that Allie Hazelwood rounded out the total with 48,628 votes. I expected it to do as well. Delilah Green Doesn't Care, I've heard a lot of good things about. Got seventh place with 37,934 votes. I wish it could have pulled higher. That would have been awesome. You made a fool of death with your beauty. I have heard a lot of things about. Some really liked it, some really did not like it. I've heard that it was debatable in terms of it being labeled a romance, but it still would have been interesting to see how it would have done if it made it out of the first round. Catherine Center, The Bodyguard, is one that I'm looking forward to reading. It's a book of month pick. It got 7,740 votes and is right up my alley. It's basically about a female bodyguard who is guarding a well-to-do guy, and I think it takes place in Texas, if I remember correctly. Yes, it takes place in Texas, and he has a stalker. So that's one that I'm interested in reading. Thank You for Listening by Julia Whalen. Julia Whalen is a very popular audiobook narrator, and I've heard very good things about the books that she has written. I still need to read some of her books, but I'm definitely looking forward to listening to reading. Thank You for Listening. Um, I talked about reading the X Hex in my last video as part of my TBR from my library. So I definitely want to read that before I get to The Kiss Curse by Erin Sterling. And then rounding out the bottom two, there is Dating Dr. Dill, which is a book of the month pick by Nisha Sharma. I have that as a book of the month pick. And I'm so bummed that Mia Sosa's The Wedding Crasher came in last place with 1,723 votes. But I'm guessing that it was not as well received as The Worst Best Man, which came before this particular book. So I'm still going to read it, and I'm going to see what it has to offer. But I'm still bummed because I kind of really wanted to vote for her and for her to make the second round. But because I've enjoyed Mia Sosa's previous work before, and this is one of her trade paperbacks. I've read a lot of her mass market paperbacks from different publishers. So yeah, let's move into science fiction. Science fiction. To sum up my thoughts, I am not surprised that Sea of Tranquility won. Actually, I'm happy that Sea of Tranquility won. I am pleasantly surprised that The Daughter of Dr. Moreau got in second place, and it wasn't as close, but it got a lot of buzz. So Sea of Tranquility won by Emily St. John Mandel with 59,920 votes. Daughter of Dr. Moreau got 47,544 votes. I like The Daughter of Dr. Moreau, but it is a bit more slow paced and it has a loosely drawn science connection, but I still enjoy it. So I'm just taking my time with it, and I will finish it as soon as I can possibly do so, and give you my thoughts about it. But I'm pleasantly surprised that it came in second. Very happy for Sylvia Moreno Garcia. Third is Tamsin Muir's Nona the Ninth. Did very well, 35,767 votes. And then rounding off the top four is How High We Go in the Dark by this is by Sequoia Nagamatsu. I'm really excited to be able to pick that up. That got 28,152. Dead Silence, which was the book that I voted for, got ninth place with 14,184 votes for S.A. Barnes. I really love this book though. I wish it could have done a little bit better. It may have done a little bit better within horror than sci-fi, but it's properly a horror sci-fi novel, a sci-fi horror novel. So it makes sense that it was classified under sci-fi, but it probably would have done better under horror for the atmospheric elements of it and the psychological elements of it. Mer Lafferty, I'm kind of surprised that it didn't make it past the first round for Station Eternity, just because that Mer Lafferty is well known in the science fiction community, but I've heard polarized opinions about it. Still going to read it. Neon Yang, I've heard very good things about the Genesis of Misery, but I have not had the chance to read it. It seems like it is severely undervalued with only 1,565 votes. It deserves more than that. I'm sure it deserves more than that. Mickey 7 by Richard Ashton, another one I'm surprised got such a low total. Let's move on to horror. Horror is the uh, one that disappointed me, one of the worst in terms of results because of Hidden Pictures by Jason Rukulak. Between the filming of last video and this video, I've heard a lot about a lot of problematic things that it has in terms of fat shaming, racism, and transphobia as being a major plot point in this book. So it baffles me that this ended up even with such a lower vote total. So it makes me think that a lot of people just didn't vote for best horror. It got 35,457 votes. And the one that I really wanted to win, which is the Hacienda, got it was very close, within like kind of like a 5,000 vote margin, 30,799 votes. I feel bad because I really enjoyed the Hacienda. I have not finished it yet, but I'm close to finishing it, and I really enjoy it. I really think it should have won. I really think it should have won. T. Kingfisher came in a respectable third place with What Moves the Dead. I'm definitely looking forward to reading that. And Stephen King, surprisingly, with Richard Chizmar on Wendy's Final Test, got fourth place with 22,244 votes. I'm guessing because this is the third in a series. So I guess it is what it is. And then you can see House of Hunger came in eighth place. I wish it could have placed even higher than this. Small Angels, I've heard good things about by Lauren Owen. This was a book of the month pick, and this was one of my book of the month picks. I'm really excited to be able to get to that. White Horse by Erica T. Worth was one that I read for my Skoden Readathon about a Native American woman who is searching for answers about her mother, who disappeared many years ago and was thought to have abandoned her. And she finds out from a series of events her mother's spirit is haunting her. She wants to find answers in terms of why her mother's spirit is haunting her, whether she's really dead or if there's other things at work in terms of what led to her disappearance. I thought this was a very well done book, and it deserved way more, way more than 2,548 votes. I'm guessing it's because not a lot of people have heard about this book. And it is, I believe, one of the picks for book of the month, but I wanted to read this for myself and I'm glad that I read it. Really not much else to say about the selection. I just think that Hidden Pictures was not the best book for this category for this year, and I'm baffled in terms of how it ended up winning this category. It didn't deserve it in my opinion. Moving on to humor. I'm kind of not surprised in terms of humor what won because this is a very popular pick. This is The Office BFFs. Tales of the Office from Two Best Friends Who Were There by Jenna Fisher and Angela Kinsey. So there's not much for me to say. Like I'm kind of not really interested in reading it, but 37,551 votes came in for it, so that was pretty good. Girls Can Kiss Now by Jill Gutowitz came in second place with 22,034 votes. Hello Molly by Molly Shannon came in third with 19,443. And then my choice for winner Hannah Gadsby, which is 10 Steps to Annette, got 19,214 votes. So I really wanted Hannah Gadsby to win, but I think Hannah did very well to come in fourth place. Yeah, I don't read that much humor, so there's not a lot for me to say about this particular category. Let's move on to nonfiction. So nonfiction did not surprise me at all. The one that I wanted to win did indeed win, which was Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart, which I really loved. It got 34,200 votes, followed by Unmasked, My Life Solving America's Cold Cases by Paul Holes, that's true crime, 28,094 votes. Why Has Nobody Told Me This Before by Dr. Julie Smith got third place with 23,322. And then What If 2 by Randall Munroe got 19,805. I'm guessing that just a lot of people did not vote for nonfiction in some of these other categories as some of the earlier ones. I am really surprised that Susan Cain's Bittersweet did not make higher, just given the strength of Quiet. It may be because it dealt with a difficult topic, like in terms of the last several years, in terms of dealing with grief. It got 12,465 votes, but I do look forward to being able to read that and finish that and give my thoughts about it. South to America by Imani Perry. I believe that Imani Perry's work should have gotten way more than 3,116 votes. I do plan on reading that at some point. I'm really excited to be able to read that. So let's move on to memoir and autobiography. And of course, in terms of the big winner, it was I'm Glad My Mom Died. I'm not surprised that Jeanette McCurdy won this, but I am surprised at the amount of the vote total, 202,606 votes. That is amazing. And I can't wait to actually read this in full and be able to give my full thoughts about it. But if you look at the discrepancy between that and then the top four, even Alan, I'm not surprised that Alan Rickman got into the top four in terms of how well loved he was. But just looking at the gap between I'm Glad My Mom Died and Madly Deeply, 40,603 votes, that is a huge gap. And then Viola Davis finished with a respectable third place with Finding Me, 32,842 votes. And then Matthew Perry, I'm guessing his memoir performed on the strength of how he was associated with being on Friends, 30,101 votes. I'm not really interested in reading that though. You can see, I'm kind of surprised that Selma Blair did not get more votes than 7,882 votes. I don't know if it's because of a generational gap in terms of people not recognizing her by name. I definitely recognize her by name in terms of the many things that I've seen her act in, or if it's or if it's a matter that people did not know that she had a memoir coming out this year. So I don't know. Year of the Tiger by Alice Wong. I am really surprised that it did not get more votes than what it did. It definitely deserves more by Alice Wong. She's done amazing work, and I'm really excited to be able to get to this as soon as I possibly can. Crying in the Bathroom by Erica L. Sanchez. So this is a memoir that I think deserved way more than 1,089 votes. This is by the same author who wrote I Am Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter, and that was a wonderful YA book. I really enjoyed it. I wish that Erica L. Sanchez's memoir got more attention, but I am excited to read it. So I'm excited to be able to get to some of these when I get a chance, but I was just really surprised, not really surprised at the result, but really surprised at the discrepancy in votes in terms of the totals for this. But yeah, I am glad that Jeanette McCurdy won this one though. I really wish that Viola Davis could have had like even more votes than she got. And I hope that she ends up winning the Grammy to get her EGOT awards for her performance of the audiobook of this. And she was nominated for a Grammy this year, so fingers crossed. maybe she'll win that. So let's see. So we will go into history and biography next. I'm still trying to move through this relatively quickly so I can be able to edit this and get this up for y'all. So the winner of Best History and Biography was Bad Gays, A Homosexual History. I am glad that that won. It got 22,711 votes. I'm looking forward to reading it. I was very surprised at the very close range that Bad Gays got, and his name is George Floyd. You can see how close that is. It's 22,711 votes for Bad Gays, 22,265 votes for his name is George Floyd. I'm very happy that it got in the finals. I voted for this, I think, in the opening round for it to make it, but I also voted in the I think ultimately I voted in the second round for Agent Josephine, which which didn't get a lot of votes. It got 9,231 votes, and I think the reason why it was such a low vote total is because when I researched it, Agent Josephine is actually a book that's told from the perspective of people who worked around Josephine Baker and not about Josephine Baker. So I think that polarized some of the people who did pick this up, but I'm still, at least I'm prepared when I actually do get a chance to read that, then I will um, be able to like gauge in terms of what information, what the stories that it presents in terms of stuff. But I wish it could have been more about Josephine Baker. Round I saw Shine Bright in my library. This is about the history of Black women in pop music history, and it tells the story of a lot of Motown artists and things like that. I'm really excited to be able to read this kind of look at many different artists who've contributed in the industry from the perspective of Daniel Smith. Rise, which is one that really caught my attention, and I'm surprised it didn't get as much traction in terms of votes. It only got 1,773 votes. Is the Rise, a pop history of Asian America from the 90s to now. Really excited to be able to read that. So that's rounding out the best history and biography. So I'm excited to be able to read several of these. I'm just kind of surprised that some of these had such low vote totals because they all seem interesting. Very, very interesting. Let's move on to graphic novels and comics. I am not surprised at the winner of this because it's Heartstopper Volume 4, considering the popularity of the Netflix series as well as the comic series as a whole. Alice Osman deserved this with 138,171 votes, although I am bummed that Wash Day Diaries did not win. It came in a respectable sixth place with 13,911 votes, so I'm happy about that. And then it came out right after Saga, Volume 10 with 14,160 votes. To look at the top four, you can see the discrepancy between Heartstopper and Lore Olympus. Lore Olympus only got 51,059 votes, and then another big gap between Lore Olympus Volume 2 and 26,996 votes was Demon in the Wood by Lee Verdugo and Danny Pendergast, and then Oddball by Sarah Anderson, 16,882. And I'm excited to be able to read several of these. Crumbs looks super cute. I think I'm going to put that on my read list if I didn't already. There we go. So moving on to poetry, and I was so happy that Amanda Gorman won with Call Us What We Carry. Very, very well done collection of poetry that chronicles a lot of emotions and processing of things that have happened during the pandemic, and she just did an excellent job with it. I'm very happy that it won with 44,813 votes, and I believe this is the second year in a row that she has won for best poetry collection. She won previously with The Hill We Climb. And then rounding out the top four, Time is a Mother by Ocean Vuong, unlocked with 27,726 votes. Unlock Your Storybook Heart by Amanda Lovelace, which is 13,617. And then to my pleasant surprise, Serenity by F.S. Yusuf is 13,223 votes. I definitely am looking forward to reading this collection. And like I said, the cover is so pretty. Billy Collins came in 10th place, and he's one of my favorite poets with 8,441 votes. So for the first one that unfortunately did not make it past of the first round, this is Pocahontas by Tai Tibble, and it looks so interesting. I love the cover of it. I'm not 100% sure why it didn't get as much mileage as some of the other nominees because it's by a Maori author, an indigenous author. But yeah, I'm excited to be able to read a lot of these poets, some of which will be new to me. I'm kind of sad that the some of the vote totals weren't even higher for these books, but I am very, very glad that Amanda Gorman won. Let's move on to debut novel. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because a lot of these were um, previous nominees, but I am very surprised that best debut novel was Lessons in Chemistry with 64,107 votes. So I will probably I'm still on the fence about reading Lessons in Chemistry because I've heard mixed opinions about it, but I am very glad that Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Su Lin Tan got in second place with 58,601 votes. Every Summer After by Carly Fortune got 57,167 votes. And The Maid rounded off the top four with 42,474 votes. I originally voted, I believe I voted Kai K for this previous round. Unfortunately, it didn't make it. It came in ninth place with 16,741 votes. Let's move on to young adult fiction. I think we only have a couple more to go through in terms of uh, categories. So I was very surprised that the Final Gambit won with 72,606 votes. Since this is the final book in the Inheritance Cycle trilogy. I've heard a lot of good things about Jennifer Lynn Barnes' writing, but I don't. But I've heard a lot of people say that the Final Gambit wasn't her strongest novel. But I am excited to be able to get to it at some point. Rounding out the top four, I am not surprised to see Alice Oseman's with Loveless. That's actually a novel. That's not a graphic novel. With 41,878 votes. Casey McQuiston's I Kissed Sarah Wheeler came in at third place, which I'm very excited to be able to read. I got picked that up from my library with 30,724 votes. And then the top, rounding off the top four is with 28,871 votes is The First to Die at the End, which is the prequel to They Both Die at the End. The book that I voted for, which was Ruta Sepetys' I Must Betray You, came in fifth place with 26,919. I'm bummed it didn't win, but I am glad that it is on here and that it did so well. I'm kind of bummed that All My Rage did not do better by Sabaa Tahir, which got 23,683 votes. I'm really surprised at the book that was very popular on TikTok by Lan Callie. Fell in love with Hope. I do want to read that at some point. I hope that there's a digital edition that becomes available, like because I think it's only available as a physical paperback version. There's no ebook version for it, so I'm gonna wait for the ebook version before I pick that up. But I've heard it's a good book, but I've heard there's a lot of trigger warnings with it in terms of content. I'm also disappointed that the Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School did not do better than what it did. It got 17,123 votes, but it still felt to me like it would have done better here too. The Weight of Blood by Tiffany D. Jackson, that was one that I really wanted to get um more recognition than it did. It felt like it needed to have more recognition than 5,448 votes. I wish it had been able to do a lot better. Hell Follow With Us. I'm really excited to be able to read this by Andrew Joseph White. I had originally wanted to get this from my library, but they did not have it in available for me to pick up. So I will have that on my to read list at some point. So let's move on to young adult fantasy and science fiction. Very, very, very disappointed in the results in this. I'm not surprised that V.E. Schwab's Gallant had a lot of name recognition, but I've heard a lot of mixed opinions about Gallant. It got 40,461 votes, but if you look at the difference between the first one and the second one for young adult fantasy with Bloodmark by Tracy Deonn, which is the sequel to Legendborn, um Bloodmark got 37,691 votes, and it was so close. It was so close. Rounding out the top four is Kingdom of the Feared, which is the third in that Carrie Manisalco series. I think it's Kingdom of the Wicked, yeah. Um, with 34,823 in terms of votes. And then The Ballad of Never After, which is the sequel to Once Upon a Broken Heart, got 32,165 votes. I am going to wait until I read the first book in that series and decide whether or not I'm actually going to read The Ballad of Never After. Very happy for Axio's Girl with the book Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea, 28,009 votes. Um, I'm excited to be able to get to that. And I am super bummed that Aiden Thomas did not make it into the final round with the Sunbearer trials. What little I did um check this out of my library, but unfortunately I couldn't hold on to it to be able to finish it. But the Sunbearer trials is so good. I really wanted Aiden Thomas to make it. I think the Sunbearer trials would have performed a lot, it deserved a lot more praise than what it got in the Goodreads Choice Awards. I'm so bummed. Then we get into the last category, which is middle grade and children's. I was somewhat disappointed by this because I still think that middle grade and children's books should be separate from picture books, and ultimately a picture book won for this category, which is I Am Quiet, a story for the introvert and all of us. I'm not complaining about the picture book. I think that's wonderful that it did win with 26,266 votes, but I think it should have been in another category. Because if you look at this and the mixture of picture books along with middle grade and children's, it just doesn't feel like it's fair to kind of illustrate what's in the top four. Rise of the School for Good and Evil came in second place with 22,822 votes. And then Amari and the Great Game, which is who I voted for, came in third place with 20,315 votes. I'm excited to be able to get to that and read it in full. And then Small Town Pride by Phil Stamper, who I have heard many great things about, came in fourth with 17,263 votes. Witchlings came in fifth place with 15,897 votes, and I'm very, very happy that it did. I wish it could have done even better than this. So, overall, in terms of the Goodreads Choice Awards, it did give a lot of surprises, but it felt like a lot of very diverse choices in terms of the nominees and winners did not reflect the breadth and the depth of a lot of books that were offered this year and that were published this year. Kind of sad about that, but I am looking forward to reading a lot of these on my list, and I am very happy for the people who essentially I won the majority of the categories. The lack of diversity in terms of the scope of the winners just feels um, like it could have been a lot more than what it was. I feel like I'm not knocking the fact that so many like great books won for this year, but I feel like it could have even been more than what it was. Those are my thoughts. Thank you so much for taking this time to walk through the winners with me. And I will end the video here. See ya.
So these are my collective thoughts for the winners of the Goodreads Choice Awards. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to be informed of when I post new videos and have more content. Thank you again. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next video.